Hello, hello, everyone. We are back for another episode of ZTV, and I'm super excited for today's guest. They are an amazing, amazing person, friend, a powerhouse of a vocal professor, mentor, and author, and Grammy member. And I feel like the list gets longer and longer and longer every time I talk to them. Their Instagram name is Sassy Cassie, which I absolutely love. But without further ado, here is the wonderful Cassie. Hello, hello.
Sassy, classy.
Oh, sassy, classy, Cassie. Okay, there we go. I always like type it wrong too. And I'm always like, why can't I find you?
I love it. I love Sassy Cassie too. I love it. I love it.
Thank you for being so patient with me. I appreciate it. And if anybody wants to follow Cassie on Instagram, all of their contact information is in the description. So even if I get it wrong, it will be right someplace. Well, welcome. I'm super excited to have you here, and I'm just really grateful that you said yes to coming live with me and the rest of this community. There's a lot of artists in here that I know I've been wanting to pick your brain, and so I appreciate you taking the time. So before we get into questions, is there anything that you would like to share before we get started? Totally up to you.
I mean, just let's have fun. Let's, I love just hearing from different creatives and artists and where their minds are beyond just talent, the entrepreneurial side, and just like the connecting side, the community side. Yeah. So we'll dive in. I'm excited.
Yay. Awesome. I'm so excited. And Ashe said, hi, Z. Hello, everybody. Yes, wherever you are tuning in from, feel free to let us know in the chat and let us know what kind of artist you are, because I know so many of you are different types of artists, and it's the perfect night. So with question number 1, I want to take it way back, even to when you were a child, if you would like to say. When did you know that your voice was a gift, and how did that shape who you are now?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it more as like it was just a way of expression. Like I just loved expressing through singing. I loved singing. My father was a musician. He was a singer. He played the accordion, piano, guitar. Like he was just one of those like well-rounded musicians, and and did a lot of things for the Haitian community and in artistry and all of that stuff. And so I was exposed to it at such an early age, and just being around that feeling of like just expression and community through music was really it. So it wasn't this whole thing of just like, I'm going to be a singer and a star. It was always a lot deeper than that for me from the very, very beginning. And and then I just would audition for things and get them,
Aren't you so talented?
But it was really like, it was really always so much deeper than just like, I want to be a star, so it's and which of course is the trajectory of my life, where it was so far beyond that when I was helping fellow, like my peers and stuff like that with their sight singing and their theory, and like just feeling great about like, them getting to the next level because I helped them, and like, and just, I always had that entrepreneurial mindset. So all of it was coming together. Just music was always the foundation of it all, but it was just, all encompassing.
I love that. It's so cool.
There was just so much involved in what artistry was about,
Yeah, I love it. And I feel like I can totally pick up on your energy in terms of like, I feel like there's always a difference between artists who were just so like submerged into the arts in every aspect of their life versus like picking it up for a short amount of time. Like I feel like you can tell that you come from like a household that had music, because it feels like even with your creations you're very soulful with it, and it's very meaningful. So I appreciate you sharing that story. And I would love to also ask you, so you're classically trained, right? That's what you would say. Yeah. And you're a professor. You've also been on reality TV, as everybody knows. What's one thing people don't know about the real grind behind your voice and like how you got to where you are?
Oh my gosh. The practice, the discipline, the moments where you weren't, fully motivated and,
Yeah.
and still just, pushing through. Um, the yeses and the nos, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, the mixture of the two of like how
Yeah.
to climb out of like a no and how to, just like stay true to what you want, like what like the bigger meaning behind it, you know
Mhm.
what I mean? And it never ends. Like even at this point in my life, I will talk about things like later on, tonight, but like just, just it just keeps going. It keeps going like that feeling that you have to have the drive no matter what. That your
Yeah.
why, your purpose, your passion. And
Mm.
and that in itself is not always easy to maintain if you're not
Yeah.
grounded. If you're not grounded in why you're doing it to begin with. So,
Yeah, that's so true. Having your why, that's been coming up a lot today, and I'm not
wow,
surprised because I just got off a call that was like, we need to talk about our whys today." So I'm like,
this is
"Oh,
so important because it's like your North Star. Like it
yeah,
just keeps you like, it just keeps you motivated. It gives you direction when
right,
you're falling off of it. Yeah.
right." And you talk about, the like work that you put into your craft, and I feel like with singing, at least for myself, I know I've definitely have hit, hurdles in my life where I tend like, when I stop putting in the work, then I'm like, "Oh, what happened?" And then I'm like, "Okay, I need to stay on track," and, like, why like, back to the why. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this for people. I'm doing this for my ancestors. I'm doing this to also show people that it's possible to do this, right? So
Right.
I really appreciate you sharing that because I do agree with everything you're saying, and I feel like everybody in the world needs a why for most things
Word.
that they do.
I agree.
Yeah, to like root you back into your purpose. Like you're saying it without kind of saying it, but like that feeling of being motivated and driven every single day because just waking up and doing the task is not going to be enough and it's not going to speak to your soul and it's not going to speak
Right.
to folks around you.
Very, very important.
Um yeah, I love that you said that.
Mhm.
So I want to ask you a question about reality TV.
Okay.
Um, so how did the blocks impact your journey and any behind the scenes things that you want to share with the audience? And you can kind of talk about like why you went on the show and your business and stuff like that.
Well, it was entrepreneurial, like it was all about entrepreneurship. So that definitely piqued my interest and why I, auditioned for the show. Um, but okay, so any through my journey, being an entrepreneur is lonely. It could be very,
Yeah.
very lonely. So being there in like this vortex of like entrepreneurs that like not just get it, but like want it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And they just really were just like hungry for it, and just being around that made me feel like even though everybody was like there was nobody, I don't recall anybody from Miami. And so, but even being in that
Mhm.
space made me feel like, oh, it's not as lonely as,
Right.
it could be still kind of lonely, but it's just
Yeah.
like, but
That part.
there's people. But now it does seem less lonely, right? Because
Yeah.
we stayed
Yeah.
connected, and just being around all of these visionaries and being around people that are building and thriving and
Right.
going for it, you feel like that motivation is there, and if you start to lose it, you have like these slew of people now that you can
Yeah.
connect with. And over a year later, it still seems so easy to connect with everyone. So it's just, yeah, it's just that part of it has been
Yeah.
absolutely wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been such a gift, like,
Yeah.
and I definitely feel like we would not have been able to do something like
Right.
this or and I was thinking about all the times, I saw you in Miami, which I
Yeah.
thought everybody was from Miami, but then you were like, "Alicia, like, I'm the only one from Miami, other people are from Florida." And I was like, "Oh, yeah."
right. Because there were quite a few people from Florida, but like, yeah, I don't recall anyone from Miami. So, yeah,
Right. But that feeling of you do get lonely when you are an entrepreneur because you're not going to a regular 9 to 5 where you're
right,
constantly around people. You're in it with yourself. You wear all the hats, and then maybe you
yeah,
have some folks supporting you. But I love that you bring that up, and just also the power in putting yourself out there, and also kind of saying like I want to be a part of a
right,
community, which is so important during your vocal journey as well. Like
yeah,
you taught me that as someone who has also coached me, and being a part of the group that I was in right before this, who was talking about whys and um, realizing that when you sit down to record, there's hundreds of other people who are sitting down to record, and why not say hi to each other, because they're driven and I want to be driven, and that energy is really contagious. And I felt like a lot of people on the show also wanted to make an impact,
yeah,
which was really, really cool to see. And, now that the season has fully been out, it was so great to also see you up there.
yeah. Totally fun. I mean, look, it was fun and it was also very frightening, very, very scary. You had those moments
Yeah.
and like even sharing those feelings with everyone was
Yeah.
really interesting. And
Yeah.
but still that feeling of just like, you know what, these are people. Because I'm in an industry where, people can get so scared that they just won't show up for themselves.
Right.
They won't do the things, right? They
Right.
just won't do it. And yet here we were with 100 people or a little over 100.
Yeah.
And it felt like everybody was nervous, right?
Yes.
And everybody did it anyway. Like you just showed up you did it for yourself.
Right.
Push the fear aside, push those, the jittery moments aside and just showed up for yourself with the jitters.
Right.
Just with it. It's just like and I had a professor in college that would always say that like sing scared. You're
Yeah.
gonna get scared. Sing, do it. You know
Keep
what I mean?
going.
Like, keep going. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you'll be running and running and running, and just being on the show was more than just this reality show. It was like,
Yeah.
you were put on the spot with the cameras, with people watching, with
Right.
testing so many things, and showing up anyway,
Yeah.
and anyway.
It's so
So,
true.
yeah,
Yeah, I felt like it definitely gave us some thick skin in terms of what it meant to
right,
step into the literal
sure.
spotlight and like learning all of those concepts as
Yeah.
quickly as we did. So that's an amazing point. And I missed that Ashe also said hello to you, Cassie. And for
Hi.
anybody else who's just tuning in and folks on Instagram and other platforms, I see you. Hi, hi, hi. How are you? If you have any questions for Cassie or myself, feel free to drop it in the chat. And also let us know if you've ever had, maybe a moment in your life where it was a little bit more difficult to use your voice. Cassie has all the advice. So now's the perfect time, right? So now I want to talk about your amazing book and promote that as well, because I feel like it's an amazing resource for everybody. So what inspired you to write it, and how does it help singers reclaim their voice and artistry?
Of course. Oh my gosh, the book is so dear to my heart, like
Oh.
in so many ways. It was before ChatGPT and all of that stuff. So like it did take me like a couple years to actually, like finish it and write it. And it I've worked with so many people by now, hundreds, maybe close to thousands by now at this point in my
Yeah.
career. And like a lot of the same things were showing up, blockages, like mental blockages,
Yeah.
spiritual blockages, traumas,
Yeah.
that would show up in the lesson and how they
Mhm.
teach the lesson, but also in their singing. And it
Yeah.
would be like, it would go up and down. Sometimes I would always say that I would have to work with the singer that came in that day. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because it could totally change from week to week depending on what they went through. And I would be the one that would stay consistent, right? Like they of every week, and they would come in, different. And at some point I started to realize when I was having students come in and they would choose to not sing and just talk and
Yeah.
just vent and just release in order to sing the next week or
Yeah.
the last few minutes of class or something like that. They had to release all this stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, I got to write about this. By then I had already had a Reiki certification and sound healing certification, all that stuff. And I was like, I got to write about this. And so I decided to, just put the whole idea and understanding the energy that we carry within ourselves, which, we know as chakras, and
Yeah.
the energy that we carry within ourselves, and what and how it holds how it reveals certain things within our voice and how we show up as singers.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I just decided to write about it, and knowing that because I come from such a strict background as being a classically trained vocalist, these were some of the conversations that we were not having, with our professors. It was just pure technique. And so I realized that there was a lot more from, through the technical stuff and the vocal mechanism. It had to be about the whole person, the entire person that was in front of me, and not just their voice. And I wrote about it, and it's cool because at the time that the book came out, this was a kind of a taboo topic. So like I was definitely looked at with two heads. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. I was definitely not. And though that's the moment too, because like being ahead of the game sometimes is sometimes hurtful and painful, because
It's so hard.
yeah, it could be so hard. And so I went through that when the book first came out. Now, a different story. It's a lot more accepted, it's more open. It's now like being accepted even in like the collegiate world that I teach in and I live in.
I love it.
Before they're like, oh, okay. I remember one professor said, this student just automatically just, figure that they must be like, the greatest singer ever. And what the professor said, "Oh, must have had a lesson with Cassandra Claude."
Yes.
And it's just so funny to think about that, now. But now again, like it's a lot more just open and basically go through each chakra, well, at least the 7, and really and talk about like everything that we hold there as singers from the heart. How do we love ourselves as a singer? How do we show up as an artist? How do we, put authenticity in the lyrics that we sing, and all of that cool stuff.
I think it's amazing. And I will say that you're one of my favorite like vocal professors, instructors, and like mentors ever. Yeah, because you can tell the difference. I've been to many teachers, and many of them are not connected with energy. And I'm a very energetic person, and I knew before I came here, I was like, I need someone to like knock me out of this energy. I was like, I need someone to like really feel what I'm feeling and know how to tap into that without just forcing me to sing. And so you use like multiple techniques that I like still use now that helped me get way more calm than I ever have been. And you mentioned for yourself, like being a trailblazer in that space, which it's so like, I think you put it perfectly. Like it's so hard. People do look at you a little wild, right? Like that's exactly how I felt with generational healing. Like you're out there and you're like, no, like this is how energy works, and then folks just fall behind it now. And I just want to applaud you for like continuing to to do the work, because I feel like that phase of continuing to move forward in your artistry, even if you don't feel seen or even if you don't feel heard, is like is where the magic is most of the time in the journey. And just you being open to helping people in a very different way, because every singer is different, like you were mentioning. So I love that so much. I'm just looking over here. Someone said, I personally freeze up. Yeah. So if you have any tips for that for folks who freeze.
Of course. Look, our voice is like the most vulnerable part, the most vulnerable thing that we carry. This is why, like, when someone is sad, we can hear it. When someone's happy, we can hear it. Like we can hear it through the voice. And it's natural to want to be so afraid, to sing in public and to speak in public and to use your voice in public is considered the number one fear, and second is death. And so I typically tell people, like singers, I'm like, can you imagine you're doing like the bravest thing that like
Yeah.
90% of people like would not do. And
Right.
you know, and to that point, like to the person that said that they're, you know, that they freeze, you know,
Mhm.
it's just, you know, just touch yourself too, and just like, I'm here, I'm safe, I'm cool. This is just a form of expression. It's just a form of
Mhm.
expression. And once you can pull out that the thought of judging your sound for whatever reason that you're judging your sound, and push that away and just use it as a form of expression, it becomes I don't want to say the fear is completely gone, right? But it becomes easier to accept and
Yeah.
to see through it. So yeah.
Yeah. I love that. That's such good
Yeah.
advice. And the fear is so real. I remember my like first session, I hadn't been singing in years, and I went in and I was standing there like Arthur, Arthur with his little fists curled up, and I was like squeaking sound out, and I was like, dang, I wish I knew Cassie back then. Like, tell me with that.
Everybody has like that beginning like moment, and
Yeah.
I've worked with some celebrities, and even they get so nervous. They get so nervous, and I'm just like, oh, it's just me, and it is so vulnerable. Like, even
Yeah.
if you're doing it and you're professional, you're doing it in front of 20,000 people, like, and then you get in front of this one person, that you think is just going to sit there and critique and judge, what I mean? Like, only that. But like, most of the time, like, we're taking it in, and we're just like helping you see, through it. So it's not
Yeah.
like, that was wrong. And you know what I mean? Let's take a look at it,
Yeah. Thank you for
Try to
mentioning that.
opening up, longevity in your voice.
Yeah.
That's what it's
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. I
So
love that you say that because, I feel like a lot of people think that because they're celebrities and they've been doing it for a while that the fear is gone, but
no, it's
the fear,
not really
yeah,
not.
it's definitely still there. And it's just, like you said, it's just something that we eventually end up accepting. And I do want to ask you about your mentorship program because I know folks
Yeah.
are curious about that. So you created the Artistic Freedom Mentorship Program. What do you believe artists need the most right now, and how are you helping them access it?
Oh my gosh, entrepreneurship, like just that mindset, the mindset of like, you are, an entrepreneur of your life. What does
Mhm.
that look like? What are the steps that you need to take? What's the professional development that you need to have? Because it's so much deeper than just talent,
Right.
so we gotta, it's I always say that I have like my head in the clouds and my feet on the floor, right? So
Yeah.
gotta have like that balance of like, what are you doing to like maintain yourself, to keep yourself growing and thriving as an artist, but also staying very creative through it, and being open and free, and like, just connected to the creativity part of it all. So it's a mixture of both that we touch on in the program. I
Mm.
bring in industry experts that come in and talk about the publishing, to just everything involved, right? Management, and all of that. And also the layers of like getting to know yourself a bit deeper before you go into the songwriting,
Mhm.
and then the vocal aspect too, of like how to find your I call them the money notes, like how to find your particular part of your voice that creates the best audience, and the best,
Yeah.
songs and stuff like that for you. So yeah, it's all encompassing in a lot of things, and it's great. It is a program that I always say that I wish I had, but I
Yeah.
guess if I had it, I wouldn't have created something like this, like I created it because I felt like it was missing,
Yeah.
like connecting the two of entrepreneurship and creativity.
Yeah, and for anybody out there who's getting to know Cassie, I highly recommend their program. They're just an amazing person, like phenomenal energy. And I know on the show, I was like awkwardly like watching you walk by one day, and I was like, I feel like I need to know them. I was like, there's something about their energy, like you just have this warm, like open, nurturing feeling. And I feel like when you're stepping into an industry that you don't know, like that's so important to feel, that feeling of being welcomed into that space and knowing that you're not alone, because there's a lot of misconceptions about it too. So
Totally.
I love that you created that, because it's the perfect way to like usher people into, that new stage of life. I like to call it, traditional coaching, into this like purposeful living and living in empowerment. So I want to ask you another thing. So what does freedom mean to you as an artist in this era?
Fully expressed. Fully
Mm.
expressed, a hint of like not caring as
Yeah.
much. You know what I mean? Like not caring of like what people think, to a certain extent, right? But just being like, this is who I am. This is how I'm going to express myself, and this is
Yeah.
how I feel. And can I do this through melody, through lyrics, through movement, through sounds,
Yeah.
and just being just expressive. Express.
Yeah. I love that. I feel like freedom of expression is
Yeah.
um like the basis of communication on earth. Like when we don't express ourselves, we also don't have, I think it was like, I can't remember the statistic, but it's like we don't have a sense of belonging, and that's really, where oppression and things come from,
Yeah.
because we feel like we can't express ourselves. And once we
Word.
kind of can sit within that, then we feel loved, and we feel seen. So I love that definition of freedom. You should put that on a shirt. I'm telling
But
everybody to put
it's like so cool. I always say that I have like a crush on freedom, like it's
so cute.
crush, I'm feeling free, and like anytime I see people like, the one person that's like, like dancing in the street and like,
Yes.
I'm always like, oh, so free,
I know.
I'm like, so I like have such a huge crush on like, the energy of freedom. Like I really do. And so just being around me, like you might hear me say at some point, oh my God, that's just so free of you. Like
Yeah.
it's just the way it describes so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love we're on the same frequency. I definitely do the same thing in the car, except I'm going like, oh my goodness, they're living their best life. I'm
Yeah.
so happy for you.
Same
Keep
thing.
going.
Totally.
Yeah. And someone in the back is like, they look a little, I was like, free off. I'm like, no, it's not the same. They are totally free. you know?
Oh my gosh. Oh
I love
my
that so much. Let me just check the chat over here just to make sure I haven't missed any questions. And feel free, folks, if you have any questions for Cassie, and let us know also how you're defining your freedom. Do you feel like it's easy for you right now, or do you feel like it's a little bit challenging every once in a while? Cassie, again, is full of all those tips. So right now I want to get into vocal truths and industry realness. So what's one vocal myth or lie you're constantly debunking for your students or clients?
Well, okay. Vocal truth. Wow. Everybody's different, and I would say a lot of people come in and they're just like, my breathing is off. That's typically the first thing that you hear. And like it could be, and maybe it's not, or like, or they're like, I'm supposed to use my diaphragm. That one is always so really interesting to me because the diaphragm is an innate muscle. And so it's going to be used regardless, like of whatever it is that you're doing. People think that the diaphragm, expands, and instead of
Yeah.
moving up and down, there's certain things like with the breath which is a whole other topic, that I could really talk about for quite a bit, but also the idea of sounding like someone else, where someone comes in and it's like, I want to sound like Celine Dion or whatever. And
Yeah.
like, and having to explain where, the sound is on, facial structure. And so like, unless you look like the person and have the same structure, like the face, the bones, like everything, bone structure, like then you will sound similar to that person, like, as I have an identical twin sister. And so if
Yeah.
you hear her speak, we sound exactly the same because we have the same
Me
face.
too.
So like,
That's
so,
great.
it's all about that. So people, they think they can sound like someone else. And sometimes, yes, you can do like listening, you can listen to something long enough and to someone long enough and mimic that. But for the most part, it is bone structure. that
Yeah.
creates like a certain sound. So siblings that look alike might sound alike,
That's so cool.
parents, they might sound alike, and so
Yeah,
yeah,
that's so cool. You and your sister do sound very much so
yeah,
alike. Like, if you were talking and I wasn't facing you, I would be
of
like, "I
course.
have no idea."
Same.
I
Oh my God, same. If you hear her like a voice note or something, I'm like, is that me? Is that her? You know,
You're like, "Is my phone echoing back to me? I don't really
I
understand."
one time I thought like I was calling her and it was like her voicemail, and I was just like, why am I calling myself? I promise you, it was like the
That's
craziest moment. I was like, why am I
the
calling
funniest
myself?
thing.
And it was like the third time that I was just like, oh my gosh, like
I
so
love that. Twin life, right? Twin life. Yeah,
yeah.
you all are just amazing. And also, like, you bring up such a good point because I feel like for most singers, there's that journey of like wanting to, like, you're touching on like wanting to sound like other people. And um, I want to ask you really quickly, like, what is, a tip that you can give to folks to get them more comfortable with their own voice, right? Because I know I struggled with that of like, oh, I want to sing this song, but then I kept trying to practice it exactly how they sound instead of loving my own sound. And so I had to like stop listening to the song and like listen to my own voice for a while. So what is like a tip that you would give to people?
It's trust, like trusting yourself, because at the end of the day, you may not always like your sound. And I think that there are, very famous singers that don't necessarily love their sound. You might always battle something like that. But just trusting that it's healthy, trusting that it's okay, trusting that, it's lovable, and you're being very true through, your sound and your lyrics. And, and those things can kind of, pat around, like, and be patted with, feeling like you just don't love your sound. It will change person to person
Yeah.
of why, because sometimes it could be very technical, and other
Yeah.
times it will be mental,
Hmm.
but the overall trust in what you're doing and what you're delivering can help. Most
Yeah,
definitely.
I love that. That's such
Yeah.
good advice. And, I forgot for the longest time, like your voice changes like as you get older as well. Which, someone had told me that and I was like, even though I heard it, you grow up hearing people's like voices change. You don't really think about it in terms of singing. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna sound like a tiny fairy my entire life, like it's just
That's
gonna
a
be
huge
this.
thing, because boys in particular, when they do their, like, when I'm working with a young student and they have,
Mhm.
these beautiful soprano-esque, sounds, when their voice starts to change, they are devastated. A lot of times they're
Mhm.
very devastated. Though they, after the change happens, they're fine and they sound wonderful,
Yeah.
but they are devastated. And for women, it's a bit different, because our voices don't really settle until our mid 30s.
Yeah.
So like, so technically, like, the voice, if you're taking care of it, will get better and better and better, as
Like
you age. Yeah. So it's not usually like the opposite, unless you're
yeah.
not taking care of it,
Yeah.
and then, I can go into the whole of when it does start changing with women and all that stuff, but again, another
That's
topic, but, like, that
that's so
goes
cool.
happens later. Yeah.
I didn't know that it was in your 30s because the other day I was like doing something. I was singing a random song to myself because no one was around. And I was like, "Oh, wow, I really love the way my voice sounds now." And I'm
Yep.
like like in my 30s. And I was like, I feel
Yeah.
like it sounded so different like when I was
Right.
living somewhere 5 years ago.
Oh,
And like someone was like, just keep
absolutely.
going. And I was like, but for how long?
Yeah.
you know?
Your voice settles so nicely, like, in the mid 30s,
Yeah, it's
and
so nice.
it's, it gets meatier, stronger. Like, again, it depends on if you're taking care of it, and
Right.
if you're seeing, if you're using it.
Right. I love that.
Yeah.
Hello, Clairely. We're saying hello to you. And then there's some questions. The first one is how would I go about exploring my voice?
Well, well, gosh, that's a very, it's a vague question, but
I can see
exploring
your
your
brain
voice,
going.
like, exploring your voice, whenever somebody comes in and they're lost in general about, like, where their sound is, I usually start them with their speaking voice. Where does that feel? How does that feel? Does that feel connected to you? Do you feel very comfortable in that? And start singing from there. And
Mhm.
then we start, moving the sound a little bit higher. but explore it first from your speaking voice. Yeah.
I love that. That's such good advice.
Yeah. Thanks,
Love my
Z.
sultry sounds. I love all of your advice. I'm like, how many questions? I know.
And sometimes it's just singing. It's just singing,
Yeah.
but the idea of actually exploring where your voice sits and all of that,
Yeah.
start with your speaking voice for sure.
Yeah. My voice changed so much when I stopped being so anxious. Like
Mm. Yeah.
I finally heard it. Like I was like, oh, I was feeling so stressed out about my voice because I was literally stressed out.
Your body is your instrument,
Yeah.
so like, and with the breath and everything, so like if your body is just trying to help you to calm down. It's not going to
Mhm.
give you the proper breath support and breath work,
Yeah.
and airflow to make like these these like nice clear sounds if you're full of anxiety, because it's just trying to calm you down.
Yeah. Yeah.
The body is so fascinating.
It
So
is so fascinating. The other question is, what would taking care of it mean? Taking care of your voice mean?
okay, yeah, taking care of your voice would mean hydrating, of course, warming up, cooling down if you have the type of job that you're speaking all of the time. If you are like a fitness trainer or something like that, different things that you can do. One thing I love, it's called SOVT, which is semi-occluded vocal tract. These exercises, and one thing to kind of like just feel like a nice stretch of your voice is to just put a straw in water and blow sounds through the water. You could do it on a song. You could do it on, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, but whatever you want. And just like, and do that. And that will give you like a nice like stretch. It's like a nice stretch for the folds. If you're feeling a little tired. But definitely warming up. I would do it every morning if you can, just every morning, and lip trills, tongue rolls, and just yeah, and hydration.
I love that. I
No,
love it.
like grabbing this whole thing of like, hitting a high note, pushing the head up. Like we want, everything to be nicely aligned.
Yeah.
And taking care of your body. Surprisingly, people forget that part. So sometimes a warm up for your voice can actually be a jog. And
Mm.
so just the body being warmed up can just automatically warm up the voice. So
That's
yeah,
so amazing. I've been singing and running at the same time, even though it's the hardest thing in my whole life. But
be careful with that, be careful with
yeah,
that. As long as you know like how the breath works,
yeah,
something like that works really well. But if not, you would just teach yourself to take shallow breaths, so
yeah,
as long as you connect to the breath,
yeah,
it's a great exercise.
yeah.
If you know exactly what you're doing with the breath, it's a great
Yeah,
exercise.
I actually started it around the time I was doing my marathon running, not in the beginning because I felt like this is just a disaster. Like, I was like,
Yeah,
if I keep Cassie Mind in there, I feel like they would tell me to stop
yeah.
doing this. But yeah, it helped me a lot,
But if
but
it
whether or
feels
not I'm
good,
doing it right.
yeah. If it feels good, because I always say that with people too, check in with how it feels. I mean, it's your body's like in this alarm system. So if it feels tight or something like that, check in, that
Yeah,
there's likely something is not okay.
yeah,
So
I love that.
yeah.
So another question for you, because you are a Grammy member and you're heavily involved in the music industry. So there is this understanding that the music industry can be tough, right? Like some other industries as well. How do you protect your energy and stay grounded in your purpose?
That staying grounded and protecting it by in whatever means necessary, but like the right books, the right people, the right outlets, also like even the right nutrition and all of that is important, but definitely having a mentor. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter at what level that, like, I still have a mentor. It doesn't matter at what level that you're in, and that you find yourself within the industry or any industry for that matter. You need to have someone to speak to, someone that you feel like that you can trust, someone that you feel like has, more wisdom than
yeah,
that you can connect to, because otherwise you're just, all over the place, and trying to just do everything on your own. I don't feel like it's really possible to do it all on your own like that.
right,
You
right.
need a community, and AFM, you know, with my program, is there's so much of that involved. Like, yes, there's mentors, but the community aspect is huge. You know, you have people to talk to and people to lean on, you know, so yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. I had a thought for you, and now it just kind of flew away into the universe. But I am going to ask this question to you and the audience, so feel free to chime in. It's kind of a fun one. If your life had a theme song right now, what would it be? So anybody who's tuning in, feel free to drop it into the chat, or any song that just popped into your head, you're welcome to. Or if you have extra questions for Cassie, go ahead and ask it. But
I
Cassie,
love
let
that
us
question.
know. Yeah, let us know.
I love that. Can I answer that question? Because
Yes.
I have two. Like,
Yeah.
I totally have a theme song for my life. Two of them. Rhythm of the Night.
Ooh, fun.
Rhythm of the Night and All Night Long, Lionel Richie.
Oh.
Yeah. It used to be Happy, Pharrell.
Oh, yeah.
Which I guess it's still kind of, that still kind of like goes into the other two.
Yeah.
But and of course, like All Night Long, Rhythm of the Night, it's all about freedom and
Yeah.
having like so much
You're fresh.
fun, you know? And it's like, I love, like, I hear those songs and I'm like somewhere else,
Yeah. Well,
you
you have
know?
the biggest crush on freedom, so of course it has to be about freedom. Freedom's like
I
the one.
I get so happy, like, I'm in a different dress, I'm like, I probably have a lei on me, and like, it's so like in a different place. Yeah.
I love
I
that
love
so
that
much.
question.
Yeah, it's I mean, I feel like everybody should have a theme song,
I
and
believe that too.
honestly, for some reason, for the last, like, 8 years, no, maybe less than that, 'cause I don't remember when it came out, but Bootylicious keeps popping up, as
Yeah,
my, like, theme song, because I feel like it has that energy of me being quirky,
yeah,
but also, like, kind of sassy. But
love
then
it.
on the other side of life, like, like, sultry side, I would say La Vie en Rose by
Oh,
Edith
I
Piaf.
love,
Like, that
yeah,
is, like, one of my favorites, and every
yeah,
time I listen to it, I cry, but I also speak,
yeah,
French, so then it's just, like, so
love it.
close to my heart, and a reminder of, um, like, surrendering to life. And if anybody doesn't know the story of Edith Piaf, like, you should definitely read about them
Yeah,
and just their journey as a singer. And I feel like that's also why I like it, and just the hardship that they went through, but also creating such magic in their life despite all of their struggle and illnesses and people that they lost. They still became this, like, icon literally for love. Like, that's what they always sang about. And so I just admire that song. I don't think I would call it a soundtrack for my life, because I feel like,
yeah,
Edith can own own that part. And maybe I'm in a little bit too much of the Bootylicious energy right now, but, like, striving for Edith.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah, yeah. It's so fun.
good question.
Um, so before we start to head out, I have one more question for you, and then I'm going to open it up for you to share anything that you would like with the audience. So, who inspired you growing up, and do you have any dream collaborations?
Okay.
Inspired you and collaborations.
Okay. So who inspired me? Really, my parents, really.
Mm, mhm.
And I fell in love with just the human voice,
Yeah.
through the songs that, my mom would play. And, she loved Lionel Richie. She loved like a lot of like the older 80s and music, that it just, there was something about the music then that was just, yeah, I think it just it connected to my soul, my heart, at such an early age. So I don't know if it's just like a specific person, but
Mhm.
it was more of just like the genre of like just the 80s, like just basically it was just music of the 80s
Yeah.
that my mom listened to, that I loved. And Linda Ronstadt probably was, the first voice that I was like, oh my goodness, what a
Mhm.
voice. And how, like the beauty behind the feeling and everything behind her sound was probably the first person that I was just like, oh my gosh, like, what is this life of singing? Was
Yeah.
through that was really through Linda Ronstadt. That was my mother's favorite singer, and and so and to work with. I love Dion, and I don't know if it's like to work with, like if that's like my dream to work with, but like, like there's a couple people that I've thought in the past of like, it would be interesting to work with. Shakira is one. Yeah, she's one that I just feel like I'm like, yeah, I've thought about it. Like, what would it be to work with her and her sound? Because her sound is so unique. And because she dances, like, while she sings, and, I've thought about like, what it would like to work with that type of, just movement with her sound, but yeah, I think I
love that.
Yeah.
Those are great options. I freaking love Shakira. So I'm all about it. And I don't know if you have a chapter in, your mentorship program for dancing and singing, but if there is one.
Well, I do that within my lessons because it's all an endurance thing. So the more you can like handle breath support and really work through breath support, we do talk about like, how can you do backflips and sing, It's like, it's really just like maintaining all of that, in your body and singing. So
I love that. That's awesome. Someone also wrote in the chat that the theme song of their life would be Mic On by Alex Isley. I know. I don't know if I can
know that song. Yeah.
I don't either. Let me just write that down real quick. I'm gonna explore it.
It's got to be one of the Isley brothers. I do not want to.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mic On, just like the title of it sounds cool.
Yeah, right? Sounds like Attention Please or something.
Yeah.
It would be a good story. Yeah. So before we head out, any last advice that you have for all of the artists and the music industry? I know folks love rewatching these over and over again. So anything that you want to share with the world, Cassie?
Yeah, just stay true to your love of authenticity and expression, because that's what it ultimately is about. The talent is one thing, and the one thing I am grateful that I could say is that to many of my students is that the hardest part is whether you can sing or not. And we know you can sing, so what happens beyond that is now the real work and the real challenge, and some of it, yes, is technical, and a lot of it is mental, and some of those mental aspects can help with the technical aspects big time, so it's just like, stay in love with it, if stay in love with, your truth and what you're expressing, have a crush on it,
Yeah.
crush on it, and like just have a crush on freedom. Like my crush on freedom, I share my crush,
crush on everything.
I crush on freedom, and just and get excited for it, because it's to be able to just be free.
That's so cool. I love that. I feel like that's going to be the highlight of this whole thing. Just crush on life. Like
have a crush,
Yeah.
You get so giddy whenever I say that. I'm like, I have such a crush on freedom. Like, I'm like so like, and just, I see it. I'm just like, oh my God, you're so free,
Amazing. Liberation, just bringing so much joy, right? Who knew? I love it. So one last thing before we go, how can people reach out to you if they want to support your work or buy your book, join your mentorship? You want to let folks know?
Yeah, well, my Instagram is Sassy Classy Cassie. So CASSY, CLASSY, and Cassie, CASSIE. And the website is artisticfreedommentorship.com. The Instagram is artistic.freedom.mentorship. So, and my book, you can go on Amazon and type in my name, Cassandra Claude, or the title, A Singer's Compass. So Yeah.
Yay! Thank you so much, Cassie,
Thank
for being
you.
here. And again, if anybody also needs the information, it's going to be in the description. And I'll be sharing some more stuff throughout the week to make sure folks who have missed this can come tap in. And I just appreciate you again being here, sharing your knowledge and your time so much. I know it's late where you are because you're on the East
Well, I
Coast.
mean, like late-ish, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
late. Well, you know, me, I'm
like
sleeping.
that old. It's like,
like Cassie, I know you go to bed at like 4, so it's like, I know. That's why I'm like, we literally go to bed before the sun goes down, so I totally get it. We don't have to lie about it. So thank you so much for being here, and I just send you so much love and so many hugs. And to everybody else, stay tuned for more folks joining on ZTV. We have some other family coming from the blocks as well, and we have some cooking shows. I also want some cookies. And some activism things. So thank you all for being here. Sending you all lots of love. Thank you again, Cassie. I can't wait to see you again.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.